Hey, welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. I'm really happy with our new guest today, Luke Olnick. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yep,
Luke,
yep, Lou Golinek. Yep,
from
that's me.
Sunflower Tow, who's in the greater Kansas City area. And Luke, I appreciate having you on, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Art. I'm looking forward to talking about some industry hot points that we've got.
Yeah, no problem, man. And for those of you that are watching and listening, I have a long-standing relationship with Luke, a relationship that was born online, and through that, with Luke and other towers in other major metro markets in the United States, we've been able to share some information. This seems to be a much better platform, having a real discussion. I imagine that Luke, much like myself, doesn't really like typing long paragraphs. So this is definitely refreshing. Well, I want to get right to it, Luke. Much has been going on in the industry the last 3 or 4 years,
Yeah,
and first I did want to ask, and obviously I know this, but I'd like for those that are watching and listening, what type of towing do you do? Do you specialize in anything? Tell us a little bit about your operation and kind of the scope, the size, et cetera, so that people can understand and sort of, attribute what we're talking about to you, a certain type of tower.
sure, absolutely. So, Sunflower Tow Service, our home office is in Kansas City, Kansas, and we service the entire Kansas City metro area. We specialize in inbound and outbound salvage. We do a lot of inbound salvage for Copart. We do some inbound salvage for IAA. And we haul a lot of salvage vehicles back out of both of those auctions, not only for salvage yards here locally, but we also haul to rebuilders in the region. We have large car haulers, 7 car haulers that we go to St. Louis, Columbia, Topeka, Wichita, and the Joplin area weekly. And we've developed a very good customer base in that kind of region. And then we also do quite a bit of parking management, private property impounds,
Okay.
um, and then some municipal towing as well for police departments. And of course, like everyone else, we do some regular customer call towing,
Okay. Like
for
retail stuff.
retail regular breakdown stuff. Yes.
Okay.
We've uh, been in business since 2010, and uh, 3 2 years ago, we expanded to the Wichita, Kansas area as well, and we have 2 trucks down there doing 2 rollbacks, doing very similar to what we do up here, which is inbound and outbound salvage, and we also do some account towing down there as well.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Luke, how many, if you don't mind me asking, how many trucks do you, how many power units, how many trucks?
we have as of this week, we just had another truck go into service this week. We have 22 trucks between rollbacks, 4 car carriers. We have a 50-ton heavy, a 20-ton heavy, a Landau and tractor, and a light duty wrecker as well. So it's
Okay, so that's a very
22 total
comprehensive,
units.
yeah, very comprehensive fleet. So you can handle light all the way up to large stuff. I
Yes.
imagine recoveries, big rig
Yes.
recoveries, etc.
Yeah, we saw an opportunity, and this leads into some of the other things we had kind of pre-discussed talking about. Um, we saw an opportunity a couple of years ago to get into the heavy business, and uh, it was something I had shied away from forever because it's that's a very cutthroat market, and there's a lot more retail opportunities there that it was stuff I wasn't real familiar with, but we saw an opportunity and decided to do it. So we bought the 20-ton medium duty, heavy duty wrecker, and then a Landau, and then an opportunity came along last year to add a 50-ton to the fleet, and
Okay.
we it's actually out on it's on 2 calls right now.
Oh, nice.
So it's proven to be a part of the industry that we were able to develop with our existing customer base and expand into new ones.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, it is.
That's
It
real
is.
nice. That's a lot of recovery muscle there, 50 ton.
Yeah.
And obviously having the trailer, the Landau, that means that you can sort of do predominantly any job out there related to heavy duty and medium duty towing, which I
Yes.
know
Yeah.
is a nice feature add for you.
Yeah. It's that is something that I decided a long time ago was if I'm going to do something, I'm going to make sure I can do it myself and that
Yeah,
I don't always have to call on someone else. Now, does that mean I don't call when I need help? No, I have, friends in the industry in the area that I can call, friendly competition, so to speak.
sure.
But we have the equipment to do whatever we need to do. So
Got it.
whatever our customers need us to do, we can tackle.
Got it. That's great, Luke. That's a good story, number one. I am curious, what did you do before 2010?
I worked for someone else actually. I
Okay,
2010 is when Sunflower Tow became Sunflower Tow.
nice.
Prior to that, I worked for three different tow services.
Okay,
One of them was a AAA contractor that I worked for a couple of years, and then two other just regular retail tow services that weren't really associated with any motor clubs.
right.
Um, and really learned a lot about how to do the job beyond just towing cars, and then learned a lot about the business as well. And the the third and essentially last tow service I worked for is where uh, I bought my first truck and I leased on with them for about a year until I decided that it was that I was ready to be entirely on my own.
Right. Luke, let me ask, and only because this is often discussed among owners in our industry, but how has that experience working for somebody else? Like, do you feel as though, I mean, obviously that's the only experience you have as it relates to getting into towing. Do you think that that's helped you though? Like having worked for other companies, seeing maybe like, oh, this boss or this, this is a bad idea or has it helped you in your own business?
It has. It really has helped me. You know, uh, the volume that came along with AAA taught me how to do the job safely and quickly
Right.
when it came to just regular towing. And then the other stuff taught me, there's a whole lot more aspects to towing than just what I was seeing through the eyes of AAA.
Yeah.
Um, and it taught me too. I learned um, different management styles,
Yes.
and I learned what worked and what didn't, and I know what I expected as a quality of life,
Yes.
and I knew what I wanted to see for my eventual employees for a quality of life as well.
Right.
You can't you in our industry there is too often a trade off between quality of life and production at work,
Yes.
and that's part of the reason why we have such a turnover problem or a nobody wants to work anymore problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it uh, I know what I wanted to achieve,
Right.
and I wanted to make sure that my employees could achieve those same kind of work-life balance goals.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, Luke. Oftentimes, and obviously we get a lot of information from social media just because, that there's you and I, among others, and even some of the other guests we've had on, we're in similar groups. We see similar things.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm glad you brought this up is, oh, nobody wants to work. It's typically misspelled and it's like typed in all caps.
Yes.
And you know where I'm going with that. But my point is let's not fall into that trap as an industry of thinking there's like a simple one line expression that's going to fix all of our problems. It's like, yes, we have challenges getting labor, but certainly, and I'm speaking here as a tower, right? But certainly, you can mitigate some of those challenges by what you just brought up: the work-life balance, the emphasis on work-life balance, the emphasis on, hey, am I paying this guy fairly? Is this
Yes.
is this person earning enough so that I can have a sustainable business model? Because ultimately, taking advantage of an employee or underpaying them, that's not a sustainable model. We've
No.
seen this in food service, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about the last 3 or 4 years. All the food service locations, oh, we want automation. Now, obviously, those are not options to our industry, but
Right.
but
Right.
the food service industries, like the fast food in particular, I should say, like, oh, automation, 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 because they're saying we can't find people. Now, they may have a better I should say, reason or, to make such a statement. But obviously, when you look at what they're paying, that can't be ignored, right?
Right.
You
Uh,
know, so
pay is just the that's the glossy exterior of compensation for
yes,
employees. And unfortunately it's the number that everybody looks at first.
yes,
Um, there's a just like with a car, there's a total cost of ownership. There's a
yeah,
total cost of employment too.
right,
And if you're doing it right, if you're doing it right, I feel that the dollar number in pay, while very important, is not going to be the only factor a good employee looks at the end of the day.
that's
They're
correct.
going to look at, do I feel value from what I'm doing? Am I treated well and with respect? And are there ancillary benefits to working somewhere beyond just the pay?
Yes,
I'll use our own business. I'll use Sunflower as an example. Um, Everyone that works here uh, is offered compensated health insurance. Not everybody chooses to do it. However, everyone gets dental and vision absolutely free. As an owner, that is, it's a small cost for me to be able to factor into my day to day, but it's a great retention benefit and it's a great benefit for the employees. How often do you get a guy that goes to get his yearly physical or his biannual physical and turns out he needs glasses, and that becomes an economic hurdle that he has to come up with just to come to work every day. Well, if
that's
he's
right.
got vision insurance, go on down to Lens Crafters and get yourself taken care of.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
or I've got a tooth that's giving me a problem. I'm going to have to miss a couple of days of work until it calms down. Well, no, let's take a day of work. Let's miss a day of work and go get that root canal that you actually need that's
Right.
covered. You
Right.
know, we cover chiropractic visits every month.
Nice.
Ours. There's a lot of stooping and bending and
Yes.
strenuous physical stuff with our jobs as operators,
Yes.
and that's a simple thing that we're able to offer. That again, does it increase the total cost of employment? Yes, but it improves the employee that I end up with at the end of the day.
Luke, it's so refreshing to hear that. I think as you are doing, taking the hurdles in their life, seriously and trying to accommodate to the extent possible as an employer, I think that's going to bring a lot of value to your business. And more importantly, for anyone listening or watching, I mean, that's how you achieve sustainability. In other words, turnover costs money, right? So you're
Yes.
making these investments. I mean, I'm not going to presume I know the reason why you're doing them, but clearly the result is going to be a sustainable workforce, uh,
Yes.
and a workforce that probably appreciates their employment as opposed to loathes going to work and,
Right.
all kinds of sultry attitudes that you get from workers who aren't just happy. They're just not happy.
Exactly.
So,
A simple phrase is a happy worker is a hard worker, and that's true. And like you said, it's not just an investment in the employee; it's an investment in the business and in our sustainability. You got to think how long onboarding takes.
yes,
Employee applies for a job, via Monster Jobs or whatever
right,
board we might use that month,
right,
to post a job listing, and they interview on a Tuesday. We run them through insurance, get them in for a pre-employment ride along on Thursday, make them an offer on Friday. They've got to put in their 2 weeks at their other job if they're employed, or hopefully show up for their start date. And then we've got at least 2 weeks of training that they do. That's ride along training. That's some book work that we do with them, and then setting them up in the various apps that we have to use for our
right.
customers.
Yeah.
You're talking just before they've towed car one on their own, a significant investment in time and effort,
Thousands of dollars.
thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. And then on top of that, you're reducing the productivity of the driver that is training them,
Yes.
because and you have to make up for that with that driver. You can't just say, "Oh, tough luck, you're training a guy, so your paycheck's going to be worse."
Right.
No, you have to make up that difference. Because if
Correct.
you're not, then you're not showing respect to the guy doing
Yes.
the training
And
to
they're
help
not
you
going to do a
produce.
good job.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
and so in that aspect, especially, it comes back to compensation. We
yeah.
have to make sure that everybody in that equation is compensated, including the trainee. You don't get to tell them, hey, tough luck, you're training, you don't get paid. This is a
Right.
commission position. No,
Right.
you've got to pay them and make them whole.
Yeah. This is not the 50s.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's a generational problem across a lot of industries. It's especially generational in our industry. It's 2024. The boomers are aging. The baby boomers are aging out from owning this industry,
Yes.
and the 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 young Gen Xers are seeing that in order to employ the next generation of towers, there's a lot of changes we've had to make.
Right.
You know, um, everything from benefits, which were when I started, were nearly unheard of in this industry.
Me
Um,
as well. Yeah. Me as well.
Time off and paid vacation, things like personal days, um, and flexible schedules. There's still tow services here in Kansas City that operate on a 12 days on, 24-hour days on call with your truck, 2 days off. That's a difficult schedule to maintain for anybody, let alone someone who wants to have some sort of work-life balance.
I'm not even sure that's compliant either. I mean, there
I'm
another,
not sure either,
yeah, of
I'd have to that's a discussion for insurance
course.
coverages
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
another podcast
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
But you know, having a flexible schedule, and like we just said, when one of the employees has an issue that they need to deal with, I have to help them take ownership with that because I care enough to do that. Because if I help them solve their problems, that makes them a better worker. It it
Totally.
it works better for everybody because sometimes it just takes just a little bit of a push, and
Yes.
we're in the green, and and everybody's in the green. They
A
are,
little
we
effort
are,
can go a
everybody.
long way. Yeah, a
Yeah,
little effort can go a long way. Sorry to interrupt
yeah.
you, Luke.
No, 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 no.
I I wanted to bring up something that I know you and I probably have discussed ad nauseum on different message boards and but I'm curious to know, I mean, obviously I know because I'm also a tower, but I'm in an entirely different market than you. I'm curious to know how has the pandemic, I mean, obviously we are, if you believe the data that we're seeing, we are out of the pandemic, so to speak. But
Sure.
how has it affected your business, and to what degree has it either returned to its previous state, or I've talked to some people who say I'm doing better now, and which is, hey, good for you. But curious to know what your experience has been there.
Um, our experience was, so we're in the Midwest, right? We never saw the extreme shutdowns and lockdowns that the coast saw. We didn't see the empty streets like New York saw or San Francisco saw.
Yeah.
We saw, okay, this is something we need to be aware of,
Right.
and this is something we need to be cognizant of. Um, and we adapted our business to go along with it. We the drivers wore masks when appropriate, and our customers, they kind of dictated what they expected from us. Copart, for example, it was face coverings while you were in the office, and the body shops that we would pick up from, it was generally the same. From a business aspect, the first 3 months, we definitely saw a major pullback in business. A lot less people were driving, and the work from home standards became, the work from home habits became more standard. Um, but after that, things more or less came back, and actually we got very, very busy.
Okay.
I would say that, like a lot of folks, uh, the pandemic and the response that our government had to it really boosted things. Um, with as much money was dumped into the economy, expendable income went up,
Yeah.
And as a result, a lot of different aspects of our business went with it. Um,
Right.
our our customers that buy cars from the auctions began buying even more cars from the auctions and needed us to deliver them even more.
Right.
Um,
So you
and
got
then
busier though.
we got busier. We
And
absolutely got busier.
right. And I guess my follow-up is how much of that increase in business can you attribute to like other companies saying, I'm done? Because, obviously, just like in my market, I saw a couple of smaller outfits just say, you know what, whatever. It was probably timing. It may not have been necessarily the pandemic that caused it, but I guess for some people it might have been the perfect excuse to just,
Sure.
walk away. But I was just curious, do you think that was part of the equation for you?
Um, it probably was to a certain extent. We did see some smaller towing services shutter. What we did see a lot of was we did see a lot of this is the perfect excuse to get out. This is the time to get out, and we saw consolidation occur. I saw several local towers that are larger than we are purchase other smaller towers
Okay.
and you saw guys leave the business that way and then them expand in other ways. And of course, that always creates a shift in how the business goes because there's a customer's free to call whoever they want to, right?
Of course. Yeah, of
So
course.
they're going to, if they see a changing of the guard at a tow service, they might call the next guy down the street or
Yeah.
whoever.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it's a relationship business.
it
Oftentimes
is.
people forget that is it's a relationship business. I have one more follow-up or kind of something to tack onto that, Luke, is
Yes.
was there anything, and the reason why I'm asking this is because, if I was to pose this question, let's say in our towing groups, I would get a host of different responses. So what I'm asking is there anything specific that you decided to do that contributed to the like a quicker recovery? I mean, me personally, we did a few things differently. Contactless stuff, making it easier for some of our customers to get a hold of us by virtue of using our app, et cetera. But is there anything that you did that maybe you think was like a contributing factor?
We went to contactless receipts for all of our regular retail customers.
Nice.
We said unless they specifically requested a paper receipt at time of service, we went to all text message and email receipts. We went to paperless billing on all of our accounts to where we would just email them on the 1st and the 15th their statements. And we also started offering ACH payments for our larger accounts,
Nice.
which cuts down on turnaround time. It cut down on turnaround time is one thing, and of course it was the contactless theory at the time,
Yes.
which really kind of it pushed that part of the business a little bit farther into the future. ACH payments is standard across so many other industries, and
Yes.
paperless invoicing and billing is standard. It definitely helped to elevate that into the next thing. Uh, Another thing that the app we use, and I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but
Oh, I
we use Towbook.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a
As
good product. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
we are who we are, but I think Towbook is a good product, and I also think they've done a relatively good job generating interest among the towing industry.
yes,
Obviously, I feel like we have a better product.
sure,
However, given in the aggregate, when you look at what's out there, they are certainly one of the better ones.
yes.
Yeah,
And they did a lot during the pandemic to improve the customer experience.
yeah,
They added GPS positioning for the customer. They could hit a link and it would text us or it would update the location in the call to where they were at.
for like a retail call or a
For a
police
retail call,
call or something
yes.
like that. Yeah.
And that really helped improve things. You know, Little technology bits like that really improved things,
Yeah.
and we've been able to take it and run with it since the pandemic.
Good, good.
Yeah.
And not seeing that, I think, and I'm just going to share this with you. I'll just share a quick opinion with you. When I talk to our development team um, about what our foothold is in the software space. And obviously, I'm a tower, right? And as you might imagine, my role within Tow Club is mainly to say, hey, I'm a tower. I'm here. I'm working with the team. This is what my industry wants. And I'm able to, you know, ascertain this by talking to people like you, professionals
Sure.
who are like, hey, man, we need this or we need this. And one of the frustrations I have in this space, and I'll step out of my shoes with Tow Club for a second. As a tower, I'm talking here, is our industry always seems to be last to adopt emerging technology. And it is infuriating. And I think without sounding like I'm targeting an age group here, but you brought up the fact that the generation of the baby boomers is kind of making a begrudgingly slow sort of exit from the industry. And what we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing the same thing, but what we're seeing here in California is the legacy companies, right? Say the owner's I'm just throwing out a number, 70 years old, but he's got a son, he's got an intelligent kid who's kind of taking over, right? That kid is taking my calls. That
Yes.
kid is asking, hey man, will it let you email this? Can I do this? Can I see, one thing, I had a great conversation last week with a small tower, a group of 10 people, 3 or 4 trucks, a couple of administrators, they do police towing mainly. And his question to me was, look, man, and I was blown away because again, being I was assuming, I'm like, oh, he's a small tower, he's probably using paper, and I kind of went into the conversation thinking, hey, this guy's going to be blown away by what we have, and then that's it, right? Like he's just going to use it out of the box. But
Sure.
instead, he asked me a bunch of questions. Thankfully, we had the answers to his questions, but he was saying like, hey man, like he was echoing something I feel about the industry, which is I want to be able to log into my towing software. I'm not looking for dispatch software. I need management software.
Yes.
Dispatch is just one function. So when I talk to towers generally, Luke, they're always asking me, well, what kind of dispatch software do you offer? I said, no, our software, that's where you log in and you run your whole company. You know where
Yes.
your trucks are at. If you filed DMV work for an impounded car, it's
Yep.
right there within the software. So the goal here, and it sounds to me like you're on the same team here, is like the goal here is I log in and I can see my operation. I can see almost every facet of my operation by virtue of me logging in to my software, whether it's my fleet, whether it's my storage facility, what have you. So I'm glad to, well, I mean, to be fair to the listeners here, I already knew Luke was on top of his game here, but what I'm hoping here for those who are listening here is like, I hope people are taking this seriously because on the other end of the spectrum, Luke, and I know you see this because I see it too. On the other end of the spectrum, you have, again, the 70-year-old baby boomer who's giving it to his son.
Right.
I hate to say this, but in one instance, I ran into a guy, and the son worked for his dad for a long time, but he didn't ask questions. So now the dad's like, here you go, son. And the son's like, yeah, we use paper, we do this. And I'm talking to
That's just the way we've always done it.
correct. And that you just hit the nail on the head. So I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy don't have a chance. He doesn't have
Right.
like he's unless he quickly starts adopting. But the responses I'm getting, Luke, are like you said, well, this is how daddy taught me,
Right.
right?
I think I had a distinct advantage when I started my business. I had no my dad's a salesman. He has been in radio and television sales forever, and
That's
does
interesting.
advertising
Yeah.
and marketing. So I had no towing experience background before I did this. And one of the things that I identified very quickly when I went into business for myself is, and I was wearing so many hats at the same time, I needed as much automation as possible and as much technology to work for me as possible because it was several years before I added my very first office person. And now I employ 3 full-time office people, but we're doing more with 3 people working full time in the office than some places are doing with 5 and 6.
Right.
And a lot of that is because we got onto technology as quickly as possible. Our towing software manages a vast amount of the business for us.
Right.
It manages our receivables, it manages our trucks, it manages our drivers and their qualification files.
Right.
It manages our maintenance on the
Yes.
trucks,
Correct.
and it manages, and of course, it manages our lot and our impounds, and when something is ready to go to auction, and manages that paperwork for us as
As it
well.
should.
Yeah.
As it should.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is that just by virtue of those, what, half a dozen things, as an employer looking at a profit margin, I've eliminated 2 people.
Correct.
And I've eliminated the paperwork.
Yes.
When you've got nothing, when you're working off of paper tickets on a clipboard hung on the wall next to the keys for the cars towed in,
Right.
you've got inefficiency there.
Yeah.
And you don't have, and this is something that I think that a lot of towers miss out on, is you don't have consumer protection either, because if you're dealing with impounded cars, you have to let the registered owner know within a certain amount of time. Every state is different, right? In
Right.
Kansas, we have about 15 days that we need to let the registered owner know that their vehicle has been towed, whether it's consensual or not.
Just like
Uh,
in California. Yeah.
yeah. Texas is even tighter than that. Texas is in the 5 day range.
Right.
You have to have software managing that for you. If
Correct.
you're depending on paper tickets to get something done,
Right.
you're going to make mistakes, and you're either going to have to give the car back for free, which that's not conducive
Yeah.
to making a profit, or you're going to be stuck with a car that you have to go through some sort of a quiet title process to be able to liquidate later on.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the software is the difference. Using software to manage these things for you and make sure that the office people that need to be notified of when you hit certain dates and times on stuff occur, it makes all the difference in the world. It makes
Yeah. No,
all the difference in the world.
I hear you, Luke, and I I'm hoping that people watching and listening, and just obviously I root for the industry. You and I talk about this all the time. I don't want to be cliche here, but I want the industry to be strong. And I want it to be. I want our industry to be a strong competitor for people who want to work in the service industry. I don't
Yes.
want them to look at our industry and say, I'm going to go be a plumber, man. This towing stuff is nonsense. My
Right.
paycheck sucks, my work hours suck, my schedule sucks. So from that respect, um, the owner or the executives, we're talking about the larger companies, they are going to need to, if they're not already, understanding what you just discussed, and understand that you know people may from afar look at it and say, oh, these guys are just trying to make profit. No, the leaner we get, the better it is for our existing employees. The
It
more
is. It
slice
is.
of the pie we can steer their way, that's just how the cookie crumbles. So I really appreciate your sentiment as respect to that. Um, I want to get to something maybe even a little more controversial, because again, this is one of the things, and I don't want to base the entire podcast on internet comments, but
Sure.
as you and I both know, that's a hot. And when you look at the number of comments to certain topics, when you look at oh, this subject. So one of the things that I think is kind of a hot discussion topic and generates a wide range of opinions as to why, and politics and this and that. But what I want to ask is, clearly, fuel prices, interest rates, equipment. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but anecdotally, just me as a tower myself, I can attest to a 40% increase in new equipment prices
Absolutely.
since 2020 or so. I could be off by a few points, but that's what I've seen. The people I buy my equipment from probably, wouldn't necessarily care for me saying that, but that is the truth. That is the reality. And it's not because of who I use to buy my equipment. It's a nationwide issue. Um, and so what I wanted to ask you is, obviously you're experiencing that just like everyone else. You're not immune to that. But apart from the technology, the efficiency, have you, what have you done to kind of get around it? In other words, have you held equipment longer? Have you said, I'm going to use the truck longer? Have you changed the way you maintain them? Are you selling them later? Are you selling them sooner because they're out of warranty? What are you doing to kind of, get your arms around that? Like,
Sure. And equipment costs have gone up every bit of 40 to almost 50% in some cases since 2020. At the very beginning of the pandemic, you were still able to buy trucks that were sitting on the ground for what they should cost, is what
sure.
everybody loves to say. We were seeing Class 6 Freightliner International rollbacks in the 100 to $110,000 range.
At that time?
We were seeing Class 5 rollbacks and wreckers in the 75 to 85 range.
Yes.
And now you're adding, in some cases, 30 grand onto that. Uh,
Yes.
a Class 5
If not
rollback,
more.
if not more. I've got a Class 5 rollback that's waiting to be finished at our local Miller dealer. Um, exact same truck that I bought it would have been December of 2019. Same options. Cost me $83,000. This truck is slated to end up at 113
Wow.
for a Dodge rollback. And then it's the same kind of increase for the Class 6. So one of the things we're doing, um, we are pushing things a little bit farther. Our trade-in age we used to aim at 200,000 on a replacement on a Class 6, 150 on a Class 5. Now we're at 200 on a Class 5, and we're going to 300 on a Class 6 truck. And we're staying on top of our maintenance a little bit better. So we do oil samples every time we do an oil change. We handle oil change services in-house. We handle brake services in-house. I employ a full-time mechanic, which for a fleet my size is really advantageous. And I would encourage anybody who is outsourcing their maintenance to do oil samples. I actually had a conference call 2 weeks ago with my oil sales rep and with a rep from Cummins, and we looked at some trends in our oil samples. I was changing my oil at 10,000 miles, and we decided to go to 8,000 miles on the idea on the logic that we're going to see better trace metal counts, and we're going to see less soot build up in the oil, and hopefully extend the lifespan of the engine.
Right.
We work really closely to follow the manufacturer's recommended intervals. A lot of guys don't know that the DPF systems, the DPF filter itself on any Cummins truck is due for service at 200,000 miles in the truck's life. And I want to say it's 6,500 engine hours, whichever comes first. By virtue of doing that, you get more life out of the rest of the truck.
Right.
Another thing we're doing is we had a truck that we actually repowered. It was a situation where we had several trucks on order throughout the pandemic that we hadn't seen yet. This truck had been very well taken care of by the driver that was assigned to it. He moved into a new truck that we did get during the pandemic. This was kind of the backup truck. We decided, hey, you know what? I think this is a good option. It's clean, and it's in good mechanical shape. Otherwise, the motor is just worn out. We had gotten to 400,000 miles on one of the Cummins. I said, let's go ahead and repower it. And we purchased a Recon engine through Cummins and had them install it. And it enabled us to buy an additional extended warranty on the engine,
Nice.
which gives us another 5 years, 300,000 miles of warranty coverage on that engine. That
Nice.
breathes new life into that truck that
Right.
I can't replace we owned it outright. I can't replace it for that anymore.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
and with a warranty, I feel comfortable putting a driver back in it full time and having it not be just the backup truck anymore.
Right.
It can be a truck that is out working every day.
That's
Um,
that's impressive, Luke. I mean, I wonder if I mean, obviously we don't have all the data, but I wonder how common that is. Because obviously, not all the equipment depreciates at the same rate.
right.
So towers are going to make different decisions. I mean, I happen to know, I'm not a heavy duty towing expert per se, but I happen to know that some of those wreckers are $1 million, if not over that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're seeing new rotators, 50 ton and larger. At you can't get into that end of the heavy business for less than $900,000 at this point.
My
New.
God. Yeah.
Used is obviously somewhere back of that,
Sure.
but to go buy a brand new twin steer 75 ton, you're well over $1 million at this point. And the and
Couple
of course
homes.
that's for yeah. And of course, that's forcing the used prices to stay higher longer. Um,
Correct.
and that's a trend we're going to continue to see. I spoke with my Miller rep the other day, and and I'm not going to give specific numbers, but I know that
Sure.
another price increase came down the pipeline to the distributors on what the beds cost. Um, and Freightliner and International have both increased their surcharges on their chassis.
Right.
So is Dodge and Ford. Um, and it's a compounding thing
Right.
because it's a side effect of inflation.
Yeah.
You have to your labor costs go up, and that's the simplest part of the equation. Labor costs go up, and you have to make up for it somewhere, so you pass it on down the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Which leads me a little off topic, Luke, but we've talked a lot about the various expenses that, to operate your business, interest rates, equipment, um, fuel. But I did want to ask, can you share without, sharing anything proprietary, but can you share or give some tips for those that are listening and watching as far as, because I know I've struggled with this myself, but as far as obviously we have all these increases, that much has been established, right? And it shouldn't surprise anyone that we do have to pass these increases on to our customers. I guess my question is, or my request from you is how are you preparing your clients for that? Like in a nutshell, like
so that's a slippery slope.
right,
It's rare that a customer calls a tow service when they're having a good day, whether it be a regular account
right,
or a contracted customer or a retail customer. So our contract uh, our accounts that we deal with on a regular basis, large customers, um, we uh, we go through yearly and look at how much business they did with us, and we look and see where we were at profitability wise.
sure,
And we get with our contact at the customer and we say, hey, this is where our rates need to be. And we do it after first quarter. Nobody wants to deal with any kind of big sloshing around of money the first quarter. So come April, we'll start to talk to them and say, hey, this is what we did last year. I think we can hold through on this pricing.
right, right,
Or I think we're going to need to increase this, or if we have a particular route that needs a little
right.
bit more. And like many tow services have done, we model after the trucking business, the trucking world, and we have a fuel surcharge.
Yes,
Um, all of my drivers, and I can only speak for myself. Other tow services do things other ways, but it's my pay is the probably the most popular way. Which is commission. The driver gets a percentage of every call that
mhm,
they complete, or another way to look at it is they get a percentage of everything that the truck does.
sure,
So um, drivers need to see insulation in what they're making,
right,
and to make sure that they see cost of living increases. But there's times where cost of doing business goes up faster than what we can raise the rates reasonably. And
and
so
that's
we
what
use a
we've
few.
seen, right?
Right, and we
Yeah,
have. And so we
yeah,
use a fuel surcharge or a service fee to
yeah,
cover some of that. And the customers are generally pretty understanding of that. Now, I have customers that say, well, I'd rather just see an increase in my base rate. I don't want to pay a fuel surcharge. I don't think that I should be compensating for fuel. It
Sure.
all goes into the same
Of
bucket.
course. Yeah.
And it's just how you manage the outflow, right? So we generally communicate with our customers now, and I'm sure that in the grand scheme of things, I would catch some flack for this. We do work for Copart,
Sure.
and they dictate to us the rates that they're going to pay to us. Now we have every right and ability to go and negotiate those with them, and
Sure.
we do. But it's also filler work. We don't use it as a primary source.
Yeah.
But having something in there,
Sure.
I work under a model of the more loaded I am, the better we are, because if each mile is making some revenue, we're generally okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty sustainable approach, Luke. And thankfully, or I maybe I shouldn't assume, but I assume that your customer retention has remained pretty good
Yeah,
despite these challenges.
it is. Despite the challenges, we have uh, I have yet to have a customer leave us or admonish us because of price. I've had customers that have said, "Hey, your service is not keeping up with the pricing," and we've had to tweak things.
Sure.
And generally, that's just procedural,
Right.
or we see a flow change with things
Got it.
that's farther upriver than we can manage. And generally customers are pretty good about understanding that. But and anybody in this industry needs to understand this is you have to tow with profit in mind.
Yes.
You have to price yourself not just to get the business, but to be able to stay in business.
Absolutely.
Um, it uh, I have said many times on many of the internet message groups that we're or Facebook groups and stuff that we're on, towing has a very low threshold to entry. Anybody can go buy a truck tomorrow, get insurance pretty easily, and get a DOT number and be towing the next day,
Right.
and have no idea what it actually costs
Yeah.
to do their business, and they get that first tow cash in their pocket and they think they're doing great. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all started along those same lines at some point.
Yes.
It's learning where your profit centers are and
Yes.
maximizing them and then servicing those customers in the best way possible, because the better your customers do, the better you're going to do as a result.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you pointed that out, Luke, because that's something that I really wish more people emphasized. I mean, yes, as towers, sometimes we chuckle with one another. We say, "Oh, I wish there were so many more barriers to entry." But the truth is it's more like you suggested. Now, generally speaking, I've noticed that, some of these guys that just kind of get started with one truck, in a lot of cases, they bought themselves a job, right? Because
Right.
it's hard to go from that entry level position to, oh, I need employees now. Oh, I need more equipment. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's like, oh, that's cool. You bought yourself a tow truck. You're driving it yourself. You can carve out a slice of the pie for yourself and service some people. But how long do you want to do a job, right? Like
Right.
that's really what it boils down to. And having said that, the sort of one thing that comes to mind and something that I've been dying to talk to you about is, let's kind of get our telescope out here. Is like, where do you see this industry in 5 years? Like, where do you see it? Because I think about this. I probably shouldn't, but I think about this like, I wonder what our industry is going to be like in 5 years. Are the larger operators going to keep, getting and gaining market share, and this becomes sort of like the new car dealers, where you see these conglomerate groups in a lot of cases. You see the same guy owns 40 car dealerships. Is that what we're going to see? Because I am starting to see, this is just an anecdote here, Luke, and I only know this because I've been approached by a couple guys that I know in the industry who have been approached by big money interest groups. And what I mean to say is guys that are investors that are just buying up tow companies. I'm wondering, what do you see the future as?
I do see consolidation being a force coming at us. I haven't heard much of private equity getting into things yet, but I don't think it's far off. Uh, there's a roadside outfit that has bought up multiple companies in Florida and has been moving along the Gulf Coast and into Texas already, buying up companies so that it's a one number, one 800 number gets you a tow if you're in this region.
Right.
I don't think we're going to see something like the failed Road One uh, uh, experiment from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, 15, well, probably closer to 20 now.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think what you're going to see is, and again, it comes back to the baby boomer owners aging out. If they don't have a child that wants to get into the business, or they don't have a clear successor in the business,
Right.
um, they have built a business, and you're going to see consolidation. And I think you're going to see too that some of the largest customer players in the field, the motor clubs, the large salvage pools, you're going to see them want to align themselves with these consolidations
Mm.
with the hope of cost control.
Reduction. Yeah.
Yeah, cost reduction, or at least controlling it. Insurance companies love to know what they're going to pay.
Yes.
They may have no problem paying a large amount so long as they know what it is ahead of time.
Right. So they can be
Um,
factored into their premiums, et cetera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The actuaries love knowing what the numbers are before they've had to open the Excel file.
Absolutely.
Um, and so I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think we're also going to continue to see challenges with equipment. It's the distributors are continuing to have problems getting equipment from the factories. You're still seeing 8-9 month queues on ordering chassis when you're going new. Yes, there are plenty of trucks on the ground, but just buying the truck that's on the ground may not fit a tower's specific needs well enough, and you can fine tune as a tower a lot better by ordering what you need, not what's on the ground. The other thing I think we're going to see in the industry, we're going to continue to see technology take over, and we're going to continue to see technology improve. I've played around with the Tow Club app some, and I've played, and obviously we use Towbook here. I think you're going to see uh, uh, GPS positioning improve the retail side of things.
Mm.
And I think you're going to see too, I think at some point you're going to see uh, the major motor clubs want to get involved with the towing management software on a much more direct basis than they are now.
That's happening now. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can attest to that. That
Yeah,
it's
I'm sure that you
that,
guys are seeing it
yeah.
where they're approaching you and say, "Hey, you've got a base of towers. We want access to them, and
Sure.
we want access to them at our rates,
Yes.
and have you just be the middleman." And again, that's a regional thing, and the cost of doing business is a regional thing. So what works for you in California may not work for me in Kansas. But I think we're going to see more of that. It's it's going to continue to be an evolution of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah,
I wanted to add something to it, Luke, just because, you and I have talked about this offline. And of course, this just because I'm laughing here because Luke has witnessed some contentious, for anyone who's listening and watching, Luke has witnessed some contentious discussions surrounding this topic. But I'm curious to get your take. I mean, I sort of know your take, but I'm curious to get your take on, you know, there's a push, and you can call this a governmental push, you can call this a consumer push. Obviously, I think it's a consumer push in certain parts of the country, but there is a push for adopting electric vehicles more widely. And in my, I don't want to say state, but I believe it's our county, because we're in San Francisco Bay Area here, but we are at the tipping point here in our I'll call it the Bay Area, but over 50% of new car registrations are battery electric vehicles. And
sure.
my question to you is, obviously we think that there's some time, you and I have discussed this, we think that there's going to be a period of time, a maturing process as to whether or not, because I have to tell you, my interest as a tower is I want to know how soon I can have electric vehicles as my tow trucks
Sure.
because of the reduction in maintenance. The fuel cost is like 20% of what it would be for, an internal combustion engine. So all of that being said, but what I'm really asking is, if that tipping point comes to your area, do you think that that's going to be disruptive to your industry? And do you ever think about that? Like, I wonder what I need to do when this, because maybe it's not there yet, but we see it.
Absolutely. So that's actually something that's a question I struggle with myself frequently. Electric vehicles are coming, hands down. And On the consumer end of things, they're here already. Teslas have become very popular, and a lot of other manufacturers are making very good electric vehicles. Chevrolet jumped in with both feet. So was Ford, and they're out there, and they're not going away. Passenger vehicles are there. There's going to be some form of electric or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles.
Mhm.
They're the standard now. You have to know about them, right? And from my aspect as a tower is I want to know when the chassis manufacturers are going to bring us a viable electric cab chassis, both class 5, class 6, class 7.
Yeah, me and
Um,
you both.
yeah,
Yeah.
and here's why. Uh, the guys that when we had when DPFs first came around in 2008, you saw everyone buying up all the '06, '07 trucks they
Yes,
could. You saw Freightliner skirting around the rules by selling '08 trucks with '07 motors.
right.
And But the guys that jumped in and said, you know what, I'm ready to give this a try, and bought those first Hinos and those first Freightliners and the first Dodges that had the DPF, they learned what happens with the technology, and they
That's
were able to
true.
stay ahead of it. And when the next generation came out, when the DEF trucks came out, they were fine with jumping on board with those
Right.
and riding the wave of technology to where now it doesn't scare them anymore.
Correct.
I want to be on that wave of technology when it comes to electric stuff, because
Right.
I'd rather jump in early when I can still fall back on my stuff that doesn't
Correct.
rely on it and service my customers well, so that I can be ready to service my customers with the electric stuff as it matures.
Yeah.
Um, Mack and Freightliner both have um, electric medium duty box truck options now.
I've seen
Um,
that.
Hino has hybrid electric class 5 cab over engine trucks. Um, and I believe you told me, or maybe I read it somewhere, that Ford has a 550 that they are working on with e-axles, which would eliminate a drive motor drivetrain style system and have
Yeah.
the axle be the motive force. Um, we need to get there with this
Yeah.
stuff. And it needs to be not just the chassis manufacturers, but it needs to be the body manufacturers getting behind
Yes.
it as well.
Yeah.
Um, because they're the vocation that we're in. They need to get with the OEMs and
Mhm.
figure out, hey, we need an electric PTO option, or
Yes.
we need to have high voltage here and here to run a winch, and to run a bed actuator of some sort, or
Right.
whatever they need to get for it. Um, I don't think that there's a lot of demand for it yet, but they need to be developing it while there's not demand, so that we can learn how to get through it when there is demand.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think uh, I think we're in the learning phases, Luke, like you said. I'm obviously I'm gonna maybe out myself here a little bit, but I'm kind of a electric vehicle enthusiast, and
sure.
obviously the reason for that is I've been driving my personal vehicle, an electric vehicle, for about 9 years, and my family exclusively has that, and I think we've got about 350,000 miles cumulatively on electric vehicles in that time. And my experiences in the passenger car side of it, for our personal use and whatnot, have shown me that pound for pound, there's a significant savings in operating cost of ownership, et cetera. So obviously, much like you, who looks at this from the business perspective, as we should be running businesses, um, I'm definitely looking forward to it. What I've discovered thus far, um, is just, this is just my personal experience. I've talked to a couple of the manufacturers that are producing chassis. And to be fair, the ones I've talked to are the smaller outfits, the startups, a couple in Detroit. I think there's one in Minnesota. We're going to be doing a podcast in the future, and we're going to host a couple of executives from these outfits to shed some light on this. But what I've found thus far is, and this is very interesting, and I'm not going to name the company because I don't want to appear to be throwing shade, but we got to a point with these manufacturers where we said, hey, we need a class 5. If I remember correctly, they had an offering. It was 19,000 GVW, and it was perfect. And the range that was offered at gross weight was a couple of 100 miles, I think like 200 miles.
Sure.
Now, my towing company is a city operator. We don't leave city limits. We're a private property tow operator. So our use case really is the best fit for that type of equipment. We average like 125 miles a shift. But the snag that we ran into is we said, okay, X company, we want you to talk to Z company and figure out how to get this truck put together. Meaning, like as you mentioned, right? Because you're a truck guy like I am, meaning, hey, how are we going to push fluid? Right?
Yeah.
There's no engine. There's no engine to turn a pump. So it was very interesting, and it was a little bit demoralizing for me because once I connected them, I'm watching the emails go from the one end to the other. This guy saying, you got to sign an NDA. The other guy comes back to him, okay, you got to sign an NDA. And ultimately, nothing got done because they were both scared that somebody was going to poach information. So I don't anticipate that that's going to be the rule moving forward, because as adoption grows, I think cooler heads are going to prevail, and they're going to say, hey, man, like, the large manufacturers are going to say, we got to figure this out,
Oh, absolutely. And some of the large players are already getting there. The Class 8 stuff especially. The Tesla Semi, Kenworth and Freightliner both have entirely battery powered tractors now.
Yeah.
And that's gotten Eaton involved, Eaton and Meritor, and they are a huge player in the subsystems of the trucks.
Correct.
As you see Class 8 adopt something, it will filter down to the Class 7 and Class 6.
The more vocational, the vocational stuff. Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, Luke,
I am too. I don't know about you or about myself entirely about how much longer I will be in the industry. I've got a couple of kids that I hope gain interest in it enough to want to be involved. But I also need to position myself too that if the opportunity to sell comes along, I need to have a strong enough business and have enough what's the word I'm looking for here? Accolades. That's not the right word. I want the future to be bright for either them or for someone who might look to purchase us, and we can do that by staying on top of the technology.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's only going to
I couldn't agree more.
We're not going backwards.
Absolutely. So, yeah. What does tomorrow look like? I mean, if we're not thinking about that, I think we're doing a disservice not only to ourselves personally and our personal finances, but we're also probably putting our employees in jeopardy, right? Because if we don't survive and they like working here, then that's harmful to them.
It is.
So I believe that that's the best course of action. Hey, Luke, I've taken up a ton of your time.
I'm happy to, Art. This has been a really good conversation. I'm glad that we were both able to make time to have this, and there were plenty of things that we can save for another podcast.
Of course, yeah, and I look forward, Luke, and I appreciate you actually listening to the podcast. I know you've offered up some of your opinions on guests and whatnot, and I've taken some of that advice. I appreciate that. But thanks again for joining us. And to the towers out there, I just want to remind everyone, if you aren't willing to know, don't tow. I mean, really, just get it figured out. Let's do this. Let's make the industry better. Luke, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Art. I really appreciate the opportunity.